physical or magic damage, as well as using items and defending. Magic in this game is really interesting. In addition to your standard elemental spells, there are also prismatic spells at your disposal, which are exclusive to Mochua and available from the very start. How these work is basically you choose how strong they are by deciding how much MP you want each spell to cost. For example, you can set your prismatic spells to take 2 or 3 MP per cast and have dozens of uses of somewhat weak spells, or you can make it so that one cast uses up all of your MP and deal heavy damage. It's a really interesting mechanic to mess around with, adding an extra layer of strategy to how you want your party to function. Eventually, you can even adjust the strength of standard spells on your protagonist as you make your way through the story. So you have a lot of flexibility with what role each character fulfills, whether it's being an annoying son of a bitch that slings spells every round, or someone that just comes in and nukes the place. It doesn't stop there though. Many of the human party members we'll gain later bring their own types of magic with them. One character uses chant magic that requires multiple turns to set up, another has powerful hand-to-hand abilities that use MP, Alon can use his crafting during battle, and some demons even have exclusive abilities like eating enemies or using flame breath. Like the other Last Bible games, each character also has preferences when it comes to physical weaponry, and the ability of demons to use weapons and armor makes a comeback from the second game. In fact, demons can even level up now, which may not sound very significant coming from a modern title, but it was somewhat rare early on in the franchise. Moving on from fighting, negotiation is among the best I've seen in any Megami Tensei game. It largely works the same as in most games. You talk to a demon, try to answer questions properly, and offer it things to win its favor. What makes this system stand out though, is that you're given this little emoticon face that represents how the demon is feeling. This can help you predict what to say next to get a good outcome, and clues you into what action your opponent is about to take. If a demon's pissed and you can't lighten the mood somehow, a fight is probably going to break out. If you're failing but can figure out what makes a demon bored or sad, you can have it leave you alone instead of going on a rampage. If you want to make a demon happy, you can try and do silly goofy shit or maybe give it some magnetite, which in this game essentially works like a bartering tool. You've also got a little progress bar to the right of the emotion status. As long as you can keep this thing from getting close to the bottom, you can usually keep the negotiations going. In some Megami Tensei games, one bad choice can spell the end of a conversation, but here, you're given a lot more wiggle room to experiment with what lines are effective and which ones tend not to work. Moon phases can have an impact on the difficulty of conversations too, so you'll usually want to avoid things like a full moon, for example, if you're going on a recruitment spree. Adding on to this is a wider variety of conversations and lines the demons can say, keeping things from becoming repetitive too quickly. Fusing demons to strengthen your party remains an important part of the game, as you'd expect, so it's excellent to see the amount of effort put into negotiations. One of my biggest gripes with most of the other Last Bible games was how terrible that process was. Rounding off the battle system, as always you can run away, rearrange your party to put the squishy guys at the back, and set the battle to play out automatically. A somewhat interesting feature about auto-battling in this game is that it can be customized. You can choose what happens when you press the auto button. In most games, your guys will just attack with physical moves over and over, but here, you can specify if you want them to use magic, do whatever they want, or just attack. I mean, wow. I can't really think of a way to make this game's core combat mechanics any better. Hell, even the sprites look great. The sole flaw of the entire thing is the encounter rate. Talking about encounter rates can be subjective. Some people don't really give a shit about it, and honestly, when you're playing Famicom or Super Famicom RPGs, you should probably expect an assload of battles. But some games are worse about it than others. Last Bible 3 is definitely on the more tedious side of things. It's one of those games where fights can trigger every couple of steps, and it can get pretty old considering the increased world and dungeon sizes. You're given tools to mitigate this, items and spells to lessen the encounter rate, but without those, it can be a bit rough. Everything else about this game's combat is good enough that I can overlook it, but I think it's worth bringing up. You're probably going to play this on an emulator, so don't be afraid to use that fast forward function if you start getting tired of battles. As you mess around getting used to all this stuff, it won't be long before you level up. The stats are strength, vitality, wisdom, speed, and luck. The game kind of tips you off as to which ones are best to level up for each character. Alon has a lot of wisdom and luck, suiting his tendency to hang back and use items or build things. Mochiwa's build is similar, but she has a bit more speed and strength, increasing her survivability. The protagonist has nearly balanced stats that leave you to decide what to invest in. Just about anything is viable, so don't worry too much about it. I think that about covers most of the mechanics we'll be working with. Let's move on to the dungeon. It's just to the left of town, and a bit more lively than you'd expect. Apparently, kids like to hang out around the place during the day, but nobody really goes down the stairs at the top. You can get a really neat bit of lore about the place by reading a stone tablet next to the stairs. The spot we're standing in is connected to the roof of the royal palace of the ancient city of Blantica. You know, the wish-granting place from Last Bible 2? The one you go on 3 million wild goose chases to find with your old buddy Esau? Kinda piques your interest right away if you played that game. What's happened in all those years since then? Alon produces a key from his pocket to unlock the doors, commenting that he kept the place shut tight to keep out Jonathan. You'll see soon enough, but Jonathan's a bit of a bastard. The ruins of Blantica are basically your bog-standard tutorial dungeon, for now. No puzzles or anything to worry about, just some laid-back treasure collecting and simple rooms to navigate. You'll eventually reach a point where you can't progress any further. There's a locked door with some kind of riddle on it. Picture here the Kyrian mouse and the cry it makes. Alon is stumped and suggests we leave for the time being, though he really wants to know what's behind the thing, so we'll be making a return trip soon. Backtrack to the exit and head back home for a rest. The group agrees that it was a fun day spent exploring together and decides to regroup the next day for another crack at that door. Back home, Rudy tells us about his day spent with the chickens, and our mom reminds us that school starts tomorrow. Yeah, I bet you didn't see that shit coming. Our character attends a magic academy designed to help students hone their Gaia skills. Told you that shit was mainstream now. Personally, I think the school part of the game is pretty neat. You get to build up your character there, make a few choices about yourself, and it only lasts for a small chunk of the game. Anyway, Dad says that if we want to make that trip to Megalopolis, we'd better do it soon, and after dinner, it's time for bed. In our room, Rudy asks if we want to play a game called Pumpkin Powell. It's kinda like a sound-matching rhythm game. This scene ended up being way funnier than it should have been, because as soon as the minigame started, I accidentally pressed a button, and it just immediately failed me, and then the two went straight to bed. The next day, we wake up to a hot-ass bimbo named Miss Carol in our room. This is our sexy as fuck teacher who promises that she means business today and isn't gonna hold back on us during class. Fine by me, bring it on. Passing through the living room, you'll notice this big pink chicken standing around. Apparently, Rudy brought it home while playing with the birds, and it kinda just stayed here. Alrighty then. Outside, the students assemble. Everyone hops in a big-ass airship, and we're off to school. The school is actually in a region called Bolton, which is yet another callback to Last Bible 2. As Carol explains once we're inside, there are a dozen Gaia powers that can be learned here, with different elements including flame, lightning, blast, and sword. You can't do all of them, so the lessons you choose to take determine what kind of attacks you're working with to start the game. Jonathan boldly charges forward like a cocky asshole, and the rest of us shuffle along like normal kids. I sorta wasted time before going to class and poked around the school a bit first. You can talk to students, shit-talk Jonathan, go outside and get mauled by crabs, barge into the demon principal's office while he's taking a nap, interrupt Mochiwa's class and get kicked out, and even do demon fusions with some old dude in the back of an empty classroom. It's honestly a blast to wander around and see what you can get up to. When you're ready to get serious, head back to the front desk. The classes involve you scaling a tower to reach boss fights scattered throughout. Each boss teaches you by challenging you to a battle, granting you a new spell if you succeed. You gotta 1v1 your teacher to pass, no allies allowed, so be sure you spend some time fighting the wandering demons to ensure you pass. Most of the time, it's Miss Carol you're up against. I'm apparently not the only one who thinks she's a hot teacher, because before one lesson, a Jack Frost drops one of the greatest lines I've seen in a video game. Carol's my hoe. Listen, he said it, not me. After you passed a handful of lessons and gained some new levels and abilities, it's time to wrap up. As everyone waits to go home, Jonathan sulks in a corner because he didn't pass any of his lessons. Alon, of course, is excited to return to Zama Hill and continue our expedition. Back at the village, there's a couple new things to check out. Some kind of big beast egg is sitting around in one of the village's caves, guarded by the young girl Rena. Rudy seems to want to take good care of this thing, and Rena is here guarding it. Speaking of Rudy, we can have a scene with him up in the chicken area where Mochua calls one of his birds stupid and he gets pissed off at her, implying that it somehow understood what she said. You know, some people could talk to animals in the other games. Maybe we'll see something like that soon? Well, anyway, Alon's bright idea is to use a tuning fork to generate a sound that'll open the door. The riddle involved the cry of a mouse, so Alon matches the pitch of that sound with his own device, and it works. Nice. Beyond is a massive fountain, and several more rooms to explore. One room has a mini-boss that's stuck inside of a chest, a demon called Femoria. He can put your team to sleep with the Dormine spell, but if you have a full party, he won't last too long. Eventually, we reach a lower floor and the base of this big fountain thing. Mochua notes a special type of flower here called a Septichroma blossom, long thought to be extinct. How long exactly? 20,000 years. This part of the ruins has been untouched for ages. It really has been a long-ass time since the previous games. This trilogy has to encompass one of the widest time frames I've seen in a video game. Alon recalls legends of the old civilizations building arcs that could travel beyond the stars, which, yeah, that's right, we did it in the first game. The people of Raga Village were said to come from an arc just like one of those. As the three continue deeper, soon we uncover a lone figure standing dormant in a small room. Alon recognizes this as a Dew. Remember Zodia from Last Bible 2? He was a Dew, a soulless yet loyal being who helped save the world from the Black Gaia. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be the same guy, but they were both from Blantica, and it's a cool-ass connection regardless. Alon gushes about how awesome and powerful the Dew were, while Mochua worries that he'll wake up and beat us to death. Apparently, he won't do anything unless someone with the power of force interacts with him, so we're gonna have to give this place yet another break for the time being. Our stroll back home is interrupted by Rudy screaming his ass off from the bird zone. All the chickens are speaking to him in unison, claiming that their name is Harry. Harry says that he isn't a flock of birds, he's a boy, some kind of being with the ability to soul hop between things. Harry decides he wants to hang around with us in a different body, so he decides to hop into that big pink chicken that Rudy brought to the house. Then, the scene cuts to him scaring the shit out of our parents, asking what's for dinner. Somehow he's already cleared things up with our parents by the time we get there, and says that he's here to stay, and that from now on, we can think of him as a brother. That sure went from 0 to 100 pretty fast. Before wrapping up for the day, we learned some unfortunate news. Dad just received word that Alec is dead. And so is his family, supposedly murdered by Alec himself. Dad doesn't believe a word of it and feels terrible at being unable to help him. Alec was supposed to be a hero. Maybe the war sucked all the good out of him. If you talk to your dad at this point, you trigger the Last Bible equivalent of a Vietnam flashback as he reminisces the glory days of his elite squad, the Shadow Walkers. We see a level-headed Alec supporting the group and being a nice guy, showing that the bitterness and violence we've seen of him doesn't really add up. Well, only so much a kid like us can do about it. Off to bed. The next day, it's time for class again. Back to the old grind. Before our lessons, Miss Carroll announces that she'll be going on leave tomorrow as she has to return to her hometown for something. Then, it's time to do some lessons. It's the same deal as before. Level up, choose what spells you want to learn, and keep yourself ready for those one-on-one battles. The intermediate fights are a tad more difficult, as expected, but it's school, so they're not really trying to kill you. Hopefully. After your lessons are done and the students are all gathered up, Miss Carroll applauds Jonathan's effort to reach the highest floor of the tower, despite failing all of his lessons. He says that he was just doing what he had to do to become strong, to which Miss Carroll says he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about, and then takes us all home. In today's Zama Hill adventure, we find Rudy and Rena hiding inside the ruins, worried that Jonathan is lurking around to find someone to bully. Apparently, Jonathan took note of our regular adventures outside of town and tried to squeeze some info out of the kids, so they lied and said we went to a place called Dragon's Fang to look for treasure. I guess they're still worried he'll find them somehow, so they came here. Now the funny thing is, you actually can go to Dragon's Fang and do all that. It's completely optional too. It's just a little mountain area with some tough encounters and loot to pick up. Mochiwa tells Rudy about the dew we found deep underground and tells him to leave because it's too dangerous, but he begs us to take him down to see it, and ultimately, we decide to bring him along to check it out, while Rena stands guard outside with some beast she's collected. Rudy is basically your healer. He's also the one that learns powerful chant spells that take multiple turns to set up. When we reach the dew, Alon decides to try and shock its system with Gaia to wake it up. While he's fucking around with his Jimmy Neutron-ass gadgets, Rudy decides to name the dew. The default name is literally just Dew, so whatever, we'll take that because it's pretty funny. He's like the last of his kind, so it'd be like naming the last human on Earth Man. What the fuck is that supposed to be? So Rudy names him and tells him to wake up, and something changes. A mental connection is made between the two. If Rudy's great with animals and he can get this guy to come back to life, he must be a lot like the heroes of the last two games. It's safe to say, this kid's got the force. Alon brings over his little invention, which promptly explodes and causes Dew to corner Mochiwa and Rudy. Fortunately, because of Rudy's power, Dew listens to his words and stands down. Innocently happy to have a new friend, Rudy leaves and brings Dew outside with him. On the way out, Jonathan shows up and starts causing trouble with the younger kids, but eventually, Dew puts a stop to the whole thing. You know who Jonathan reminds me of? Fucking Bling Bling Boy. I swear, I couldn't stop imagining him like that the entire game. Dew just sucks. Alright, well, I'd say that was a good day overall. Dew decides to hang out in the shade back in town, and we head home for a good night's rest. The next day is our last with Miss Carroll. She assures us that she'll be back before long, and encourages us to continue on our path to becoming a Gaia Master. You know the drill by now. Fight the monsters, gain the levels, learn some spells. After finishing up, Carol's impressed with our abilities and wonders just how strong we'll get in the future. Before we head home, there's this big meeting with the principal where he explains that unfortunately, the school is at risk of being shut down due to a law passed by the Polynesian states banning the use of Gaia. Technically, we don't live under the jurisdiction, but many students, such as those from Megalopolis, do, and it would be extremely difficult to run the school after losing that many people. The principal says that for the next week, the school's staff is going to go meet with some officials and see if anything can be worked out to save the place. So, no fucking school for a week. Kick ass. Though, we did just kind of finish up everything anyway, so maybe it's not that exciting. Back home, everyone wishes Miss Carroll a peaceful trip, and we're on break, baby. Over in the caves, there's this big hubbub about that beast egg from a while back. It's getting ready to hatch. So, we grab Rudy and Dew, bring them over, and out comes this little dragon thing. It immediately starts to mess around with Dew, and Rudy decides that a good name for it would be Teeny. No. I don't think so. See, I like Joe better. Yeah, I'm naming it Joe. Afterwards, the crowd clears, and it looks like our little trip to Megalopolis isn't gonna happen, given the new Gaia laws and, well, the death of Alec. When we get home, Harry is no longer inside the giant pink chicken. Dad doesn't know exactly where he went, but he said it was possible that Harry transferred himself to Megalopolis to see what was going on over there. Our idle conversation is then interrupted by a roaring sound coming from outside. Dad immediately recognizes it as the sound of something called the Vol ship, which is apparently some kind of troop transport vehicle. He rushes outside and, yeah, there it comes. Oh shit. The camera cuts to the inside of the craft as this weird-ass looking dude named Gorka talks to his men about his mission to kill a Shadow Walker. This guy's coming to murder our dad, in the middle of the day. Dad commands Rudy to go with Dew and urges our mom to tell the other villagers to hide somewhere underground. As for us, he says it falls on us now to keep the others safe. By the way he's talking, I don't think our dad expects to survive this one. I was really immersed by this point. I love how the game spends just enough time settling you into this innocent routine of school and backyard exploration, and then it drops the floor out from under you and gets really serious. The horrors of war seem to be catching up to our old man, and it doesn't look like he can shield us from his past forever. The ship makes a sudden landing outside the town, and Dude joins our father as he charges in. Meanwhile, we're just sitting with our thumb up our ass in somebody's cellar. Everyone is obviously confused about why the Pelesian army is here, and seeing an unfit to just sit around, Mochua decides to join us to take a peek inside the ship. I know our job's to protect the village, but we're making it pretty easy for the invaders if all we do is just group up in one spot, so let's go see if we can help out. Before leaving town, you should probably grab a lawn from his lab too. The extra backup couldn't hurt. Head inside the ship, and yeah, we are now killing human beings. These guys aren't fucking around. The battles are plentiful inside here, but on the bright side, home is just out the door, so at least we can retreat for a full heal if necessary. Be sure to loot the place for equipment and get that stuff on your team right away. We come across Dad pretty quickly, who's kicking major ass, killing dudes left and right. He doesn't really pay us much mind, only eliminating the threats in the room before proceeding onwards. Reaching the control room, we find Glorka gloating about how slow our father's become over the years. Apparently, in his prime, he would have taken care of everyone on board within 5 minutes. Then, Dad walks in behind us, and surprisingly doesn't give us a lecture or some shit like that. Actually, he accepts our decision to help out, though he regrets that we have to see him doing stuff like this. Dad tells us that we need to hit the control room from 2 sides at once, or someone will have time to activate the ship's weapons and cause major damage at the village. He asks if we prefer to take the left or right side, with the one on the right likely going up against Glorka. Fuck it, let's show him what we can do. Glorka looks even weirder in battle than he does as an overworld sprite. I knew he looked like he was shirtless, but I kept thinking, maybe it's just some oddly skin-colored armor? Nah, the dude's freakishly tall and wears barely any clothes. This guy must be getting close to retirement. He hits for moderate damage and his little assassin friend adds on to that. You'll probably want to focus fire the assassin first just to get him out of the way, then wail on Glorka with the full strength of your team. He can take a pretty solid beating even with a big team, but it's unlikely he'll be able to outdamage you as long as you keep up the offensive. When he goes down, Dad explains that he's got no idea why the Pelesians would want him dead. He was a Shadow Walker under their service. That makes Alex's bitterness towards the Pelesians in the game's intro even more strange. It wasn't just him cursing some enemy army, it was his own people that he risked his life to protect. The questions just keep piling up. Well, thankfully, nobody on our side was hurt today. We managed to fend off this attack, but who knows if we can do it again. Back home, there's a big village meeting, where Glenn decides that it might be best for him to leave town for a while and lay low to keep everyone out of trouble. Nobody wants him to do this, but he might have a point. During the meeting, Harry arrives in the form of what looks like a fox and lets us know that the Pelesians want our dad dead. But we kinda already figured that out. We do gain some valuable insight from him though. He reveals that during a meeting he overheard in Megalopolis, the city councilmen discussed their plans to kill off the remaining Shadow Walkers because their mind locks have begun to release. The leader of the council is some guy called Ben Showa, and he seems uncomfortable with the idea, explaining that Alec was only killed because he tried to destroy something called Fellisto. Killing off the others would just be treason. The other councilmen, however, are insistent that all Shadow Walkers must be dealt with. Then, some freaky zombie-looking dude called Banipal barges in, who informs Ben Showa of his discovery of a method to revive ancient demons. Well, we're just all over the place today, aren't we? Dad seems to recall this Banipal guy. He's an evil man who kills people and harvests their Gaia. He was supposed to have been killed during the war, but I guess he came back. The village elder decides we'd all better run to the fucking hills before we get devoured, and suggests finding a new place to live. Yep, sounds about right, wouldn't want to stay here either. So what they do is hire a pirate named Shark to bring in his floating pirate ship and lift the entire town's population to another spot. And yes, he's dressed like the most stereotypical pirate possible. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to worry about, huh? Reviving demons, evil aristocrats, a fucking pirate? We better hope this guy takes us as far away as possible. We aren't moving out next week or anything either, it's like right now. We're getting the fuck out. The ship lands, everyone boards, and that's it. Goodbye, old life. Despite going through a rather horrifying bout of trauma just hours prior, Jonathan's back to being his old bitch self again, and is poking around near the escape pods, desperate for some sort of attention. The others are scattered around, waiting to arrive wherever the hell the Elder decides we should go. It seems our father is still planning to leave the group, and wants to find the other Shadow Walkers before they're assassinated. And Mom wants to join him. They ultimately decide to entrust Rudy to us, and the ship momentarily stops to let them off. Back on board, Shark gives us some words of encouragement, and we're airborne again. Our parents promise to be back soon, but we don't exactly have a way of contacting them, or knowing where they are, so who knows how this is gonna go. Back in the escape pod room, Jonathan continues to cause trouble, even going as far as making the entire fucking ship vibrate somehow. And you're not gonna believe what this dude did while we were gone. He says that Rudy was annoying him, so he shoved him into one of the escape pods and launched it. What the? Hello? You can't do that, man. I just lost my parents, and my brother's probably like dead at the bottom of the ocean or something. With nothing left to lose in this world, we decide to hop into the only remaining pod and give chase. Hope nobody else ends up needing one of these things. So we get spat out the bottom of the ship and are sent hurtling into some kind of island at 9,000 miles per hour. Then we wake up in bumfuck nowhere in some swampy backwater shantytown. The villagers immediately blame us for murdering their children. Slow down. I might have a concussion or something. You can't do this to me. Whew. Needless to say, the pacing sure skyrockets at this point. From what these people say as they drag us along, there's some guy from a place called Dalek Village that murders children, and they think that somehow we got catapulted over here from there to cause trouble. It would probably sound even less believable if I told them the truth about what just happened, to be fair. All of a sudden, just as they're about to string our intestines from a tree or something, Miss Carol appears and stops them all. This is the hometown she returned to. What a coincidence. After catching her up on what's been going on since we last saw her, she offers to help find Rudy in just a bit, and leaves us to wander around. From what the villagers say, this murderer guy sounds a lot like Banipal, so I guess Carol planned to take a break from teaching for a bit and try to track him down on her own. Kinda badass. Take some time to stock up on supplies, buy some weapons and armor, and then find Carol. As one of her best students, she proposes to some of the townspeople a plan to bring us along to Dalek Village, find Rudy, and finally put a stop to the murders. They don't really think an investigation is worthwhile, and seem to believe the murderer will finish off the rest of the town in our absence. Carol apologizes for their attitudes, and we decide to go along with the plan anyway. So yeah, Miss Carol is a party member now, and packs quite the punch. Together, it's really easy to just melt through shit and gain a lot of experience plowing down monsters. Dalek is to the northwest. Ironically, the first thing that happens there is a couple villagers accuse us of being child murderers. They say someone from Carol's village came and tried to kidnap a child, intending to bring them to a place called Ramarnia, which is a temple to the east. Though the whole town is suspicious of us, they allow us to interview the almost captured child, Taki. The people who tried to pull off the kidnapping were wearing disguises to make them look like they were from Carol's village. We can deduce that whoever has been taking children from Carol's place were wearing disguises to look like Dalek's people. The kid again brings up this Ramarnia place, which Carol says means crescent moon. Guess we're gonna have to check it out. Cross some bridges, pass through some forests, and there it is, looking a bit more opulent than I expected. Inside, we overhear a Polynesian captain angrily ranting at his men. They've spotted a little dragon and a giant in the area, and the captain is pissed that they didn't do anything about it. At least it sounds like Rudy could still be alive. The captain sends most of them off, and tells the remaining man that under direct orders from Ben Showa, more children need to be gathered to feed a monster they've unleashed to kill Shadow Walkers. It sounds like this monster was successful at assassinating a Shadow Walker already, somebody named Randy, but now the thing's out of control, and demands sacrifices. So, as expected, the third party is the Pelesian army, and it sounds like Banipal's plan to resurrect an ancient demon ended up working. Make your way through a rather brief dungeon, and we find Rudy on some kind of sacrificial altar. He's being guarded by another shirtless dude. This one's named Baraki. Huh, that's the second Baraki I've seen in a Megami Tensei game. This dude looks even goofier than Glorka did. Is this supposed to be threatening? Honestly, maybe it is a bit creepy. Why do the high-ranking officers of this army roam around shirtless with oddly proportioned bodies? Are they mutants or something? He feels a bit easier than Glorka, probably because of Carol's advanced power. The fight doesn't last long, even if you're not rolling with any demons to help you out, so just throw out your best spells and there's little to worry about. The remaining soldiers try to keep Rudy from us, but Dew arrives and they quickly surrender. They don't make it far though because they're killed on the way out by this shape-shifting reptilian thing. Just as it's about to kill us, for some reason it turns around and Rudy sends Dew after it. On the path back to the village, through a small cave, we run into the monster again, floating out over a stream. It quickly escapes, and the only way to follow it is with a boat. Carol says that a couple of villages should be beyond the stream if we can make it, and sends Dew to deliver a letter to her hometown explaining that we'll be giving chase to the creature. After a quick stop back at Dalek Village, we're on our way. Steering our boat through the cave, we encounter all manner of strange beasts. Eventually we come across guys who are scared shitless because they wanted to challenge the monster and avenge the death of that Randy guy they talked about earlier, but they didn't have much luck. We get a handful of new weapons and items to bring along, including Randy's sword, so at least his weapon can get revenge in his place. Beyond here, the stream continues for quite a while. It's definitely one of the lengthier dungeons we've been through. It's basically a war of attrition. You better hope you came prepared with items to heal with, because your magic is probably not going to last the entire time if you're fighting every battle you run into. None of the monsters are particularly threatening, but there's just so many, it's so much ground to cover. When you finally emerge, there's a town a quick walk to the northeast. This is Barak Village, and it looks a little run down. The cries of that monster grow ever closer as we walk through, and Carol urges us to stay alert. In one of the abandoned homes is a letter from Randy, written before his death, that begs whoever comes across it to tell the others that Banipal has survived. We realize all too late that the monster is actually a group of monsters. They've been watching, and now have us surrounded. Yeah, we gotta fight 3 at once. Group targeting spells really come in handy here, so have your guys sling those out while Carol provides backup damage with her spells. Honestly, I'd just leave Rudy on heal duty and have your other demons to soak up hits. Just have them defend or use items to keep the group in good shape. It depends on what kind of team you're working with. I was kinda lacking on fusion at this point in the game, so my demons were strictly on support. After beating on them for a while, they run away, and we chase them down into yet another nearby cave. Fortunately, this one's a bit shorter. At the end of it is some big room of machinery that wouldn't feel out of place in a Resident Evil game. Judging by what's inside of this tube, it seems like these monsters are manufactured somehow. Maybe this is how Banipal resurrects them. As we're checking things out, suddenly we're ambushed again. Alrighty, round 2. The same strategies apply. The fight doesn't appear to be any harder than the first one. Hopefully you saved your game or decided to heal up after last time. I wouldn't blame you for going into this one a bit unprepared. The game really kind of keeps you in the moment of the action. This time, the damn things actually die. Carol seems to hear lingering spirits in this room, warning her of impending doom, so we're not in the clear yet. Banipal is gonna be here any second. Oh shit. Before making our escape, you can check out a handful of books lying around in some tiny room nearby. One is the Necronomicon, the Art of Undeath. It kinda just goes into the elemental makeup of humans and beasts, and says that by manipulating certain patterns, a form of life can be granted even when the elements are out of balance. Another is a journal of Banipal that goes into his grudge against the Shadow Walkers for trying to kill him during the war, and his use of the people that used to live in this town to fuel his schemes. The last one just contains a quick entry about needing more Gaia. Just as we're about to leave this place, Banipal arrives, and Carol seems really nervous. She gives us a letter and decides she needs to cause a distraction, unwilling to put us in harm's way. In a somewhat emotional scene, Carol gives us a final lesson, telling us to always stay strong, be kind, remember that we can do anything, and believe in the path we've chosen. She officially declares us graduates of the Academy, and then runs off to face Banipal, who very quickly critically injures her. Banipal continues back to his lab, and though we have a moment to talk with the immobilized Miss Carol, she tells us to run immediately because she's going to use the last of her power to blow this place the hell up. As we exit the cave, it collapses, leaving us with nothing to do but walk back to town. Everyone, including Carol's sister Meryl, eagerly awaits to hear how our adventure went, and unfortunately, we've got to break the bad news. Though, we do have that letter we haven't read yet. It details Miss Carol's final wish for the citizens of this town to pack up and leave. Her sacrifice wouldn't be enough to kill Banipal, only slow him down so that we could escape. The guy's been messing around with immortality magic. Of course it's not going to be that easy. Well, we reunite with Dew and Joe, and the village people decide to go along with some orcs on a ship to a new place to live. Yeah, orcs. Things seem to be going smoothly again for like 5 seconds before, of course, Banipal shows up. Classic shit. The orcs decide to head out and fend him off for as long as they can, and Meryl brings us to a dark cave containing some wooden boats that we can escape on. Honestly, we should probably stay and help out, but she wants us to be safe, and we're sent on our way. The boat drifts off, and actually, we end up in the ocean, eventually coming to the shore of some unfamiliar new land. We wake up in some kind of Pelesian military camp run by 2 demons, Gozuki and Mezuki. At the very least, they're friendly, so you can take a minute to chill out, fuse demons, and purchase some supplies. Despite all the terrible shit we've been hearing about the Pelesian army, I guess they're not just gonna murder an innocent group of people who end up on their doorstep. Gossip around the camp reveals that these guys have a werewolf problem, and that some really powerful one called Roy is causing a lot of issues in the area. In fact, they're on such high alert that they don't really want us to leave, just in case we're werewolf spies. The captain asks if we'd lure Roy here to help them out, and also prove our innocence. We don't really have an option to refuse because the captain decides that Rudy should stay at camp, so if we want to leave this place with our brother, we'd better get to it. The captain hands us a letter and sends us on our way. It's always a letter, isn't it? A good ways to the south is another village tucked below some hills called Roy's Village. Gee, wonder who lives here. Apparently, a bunch of fucking Christmas elves, but they're friendly and promise entry to anyone as long as they're not Pelesian soldiers. This feels dirty. After taking a walk around, we find out Roy isn't even here, but he will be when the moon is full. Last Bible 2 had a little gimmick like this as well. Go outside and mess around on the world map until you've got a full moon. The number below the moon phase should say 14 in the menus. Head back in, and this time, the guy who told us Roy wasn't here talks to us a bit more, and reads the letter we're carrying. The captain claims to have imprisoned an elf back at camp, and wishes to challenge Roy in a one-on-one battle in exchange for his freedom. Considering it's a full moon, Roy should be able to handle it, since that's when werewolves are at their strongest. A few others transform alongside him, and they run off. Not quite a one-on-one fight, but whatever, I did what the captain said. These guys work quick. The werewolves have already snuck into the camp and are about to break the elf free. Honestly, I didn't even think there was an elf. I figured that was just a trick. Roy tells us to fight the guards off and grab the guy, and he'll go bring Rudy to us. I wasn't really trying to get that involved like this. They probably would have let us go eventually. Oh well. The captain and his boys are extremely easy and stand basically no chance against us. I fought this battle as a 3v3, and it was still barely a challenge. After the fight's over, unfortunately, the soldiers then activate a device that forces the moon to change phases over to a new moon, and Roy is then killed in combat with Gozuki and Mezuki. Well, fuck. The other werewolves survive, revert back to being human, and then kinda just awkwardly walk out. The two demons are actually pretty apologetic. Roy basically just died for no reason. I mean, the elf was just a bargaining chip. You know, I think there's actually a way for Roy to survive this. There's something different you can do during this little arc that prevents him from dying. It might even be something obvious that I just overlooked, because I do that on occasion. Maybe investigating that moon machine before they attack? I don't know. I recall seeing someone talk about it on a forum somewhere, but I couldn't find it again. Maybe it's just a rumor. I'm sure one of you in the comments knows, though. Anyway, that was a whole bunch of senseless violence. Let's get the hell out of here. I don't know how we're gonna get back into contact with our family, but we're not gonna do it in this place. Continue out through the back of the camp this time, and you'll find an entrance to a mountain pass. After a rather uneventful walk, you'll end up near a little settlement called FS Delivery. This place is full of what looks like shipping crates. It's like a fantasy medieval version of an Amazon warehouse. Many of the people working here tell us about a gang called the Barbaroi that have been terrorizing them recently. One guy has a story about the time he heard groaning coming from inside a container he was transporting. Not much else we can do here right now, though apparently the boss of the company is in a nearby city called Ekinmupolis. It's not too far of a walk. Pretty big place too. Another one that's built into the rocks like our hometown. Somehow, Jonathan is here. He was on the ship last time. Did they land near here? He complains about how hard it was to find us, and then challenges us to a duel right in the middle of town. Sure, you know what? That's fine. I've been wanting to beat this guy's ass for a while now. Just like back at the camp, I did this fight as a 3-on-3. Jonathan's demons are about worthless, and the attacks he uses in battle are downright weird. One of them says, Jonathan cracks a joke, and it plays an animation like an ice attack. It would always miss when he used it too. Whatever. Smack his ass around in front of everyone, and then the police show up and bring us to jail. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We just tried to murder each other in broad daylight. Not only that, Gaia isn't legal here. Remember the prohibition laws? Our dumbasses were just slinging spells around like it was nothing. Fortunately, because we're kids, or close enough, the guards just threaten us with life imprisonment if we do it again, and let us go. From here, Jonathan walks out, and so does Rudy actually, who seems to want to explore town by himself. There's a whole lot of shit you can do here in the city. There's a big underground market with a lot of shops, including a bounty hunting place where you can purchase favors from demons that will temporarily assist you in battle if you call them. It's a little different than recruiting them to your party. You can think of these more as special moves or something. The demon will support you and your party for a bit throughout a fight of your choosing, and then leave afterwards. You can also reunite with the pirates, who really give us the business for all the trouble we've caused, even though obviously it wasn't our fault. Captain Shark is a bit lighthearted about the whole thing, and recognizes how much we've grown since the day we were shot out of his ship in Mach 17. He lets us know that Mochua is alright, though extremely worried too. Well, that's good to hear. We still don't know exactly where all of our friends and family are, but it sounds like the rest of the trip went okay at least. When we find Jonathan again, he's off trying to be a hero to the people of this town, looking for the lost sister of a kid named Philip. Apparently, the girl was talking to someone from the Lara company. You know, didn't that guy back at the shipping place talk about hearing a voice inside a container? You don't think? No, probably not, right? Just a coincidence. Nearby the marketplace is a news board where you can read the stupid shit the Polynesian government is selling to its people. The Fellisto Perpetual Engine is operating smoothly and leading the country into a new era where Gaia isn't necessary. That's not the first time we've heard about this Fellisto. So it's trying to replace magic. You can bet your ass there's some dark conspiracy behind something with a name like that. You can actually even find Meryl here again too, from back at Carol's place. She's glad we survived our impromptu voyage across the ocean in a tiny wooden boat. During our conversation, a soldier harasses her and denies any Polynesian involvement in the whole child kidnapping mess, which she is rightfully trying to expose. After hanging around for a while and talking to a lot of people, you can find this bounty hunter dude named Jaeger at the town's final major point of interest, the bar. He doesn't really want anything to do with us, but Meryl enters and asks if he'd kill off Banipal for her, to which he agrees. In exchange, he wants a stone called Memorite. That's the only price he'll take for it, so it must be pretty important to him. On the way out, oddly, Jaeger seems to recognize Dew and acts kinda cryptic about it, until suddenly, this drunk dude stumbles over and tells him to shut the fuck up. Now, for the first time in any of these videos, that was not an exaggeration or me rephrasing it. That's what he says. Jaeger kinda just ignores the crowd growing near him and continues indulging in his mysterious ways, explaining that the Dew were created as friends. He addresses Dew with some mystical magical speech, and suddenly, our little buddy starts wrecking the shit out of the drunk guys. Weird stuff, to be sure, but as Rudy informs us, we have a pressing matter to attend to. Jonathan has gotten himself into trouble with the Barbaroi gang, who have a base on a nearby island. Captain Shark agrees to help us get our dumbass friend back, and gives us a specific signal to give him once we reach the water's edge, which for some reason, the game makes you remember before you can head on over. The island is chock full of all manner of thugs, cretins, and ne'er-do-wells. You've got to make your way through a good bit of caves, enduring long, roundabout paths as you climb up and down with ropes hanging throughout the place. After a while of this, you'll come across a big cell that looks like someone spilled a bag of their favorite fantasy toys into it. There's an orc in there, an elf, a couple humans. It's like Noah's Ark up in this shit. You have to fight 6 guards to set everyone free, but they aren't that much stronger than the encounters you've been facing all the way here. I will say, one thing this game has very much in common with the other Last Bibles is that the bosses are usually the easiest part of a dungeon. It's nearly always the case that the actual act of getting to the boss is way harder than whatever's waiting for you at the end. When you're victorious, the prisoners come out, among them Lily, Philip's sister. Nice. A few pirates run in and tell us that somehow Jonathan swam all the way to this island, and when we arrive back on the mainland, he sulks off in the corner as usual. The prisoners tell Captain Shark that the Barbaroi had planned to ship them somewhere, though they don't know exactly where. So here we go. You know what? I'm gonna come out swinging. I'm gonna solve this game's plot. Let's see if I'm right. We've recently learned about a really violent gang that kidnaps people and terrorizes the town. And we've got the Pelesian states who are okay with employing kidnapping to suit whatever goal they have. The prisoners say they were going to be shipped to some unknown place, and we've also learned of the Fellisto Perpetual Engine that somehow isn't controlled by magic. But it keeps the entire country prospering. You know, somehow. You following me here? The Pelesians and the Barbaroi, or really any criminals that are willing, are in cahoots. The Pelesians can't cover up that many kidnappings, so they use a method that makes it so they don't have to. Criminals do it for them. These people are then shipped off to the engine, which, I don't know, they didn't come out and say it yet, but it probably uses people as a fuel source. The criminals probably get some protection in exchange, the government powers up the machine, and everyone's happy. That's gotta be what's going on here. I guess we'll see if I'm right. After all this mess wraps up, Captain Shark drops us off at a new place called Gotland. Maybe our parents are over here? Like all good JRPG villages, you're immediately immersed into some drama right when you walk in. A girl that lives here, Mina, was recently married to a guy named Bob, and it's the talk of the town. If you go into Mina's house, everyone seems pretty uptight, and a guard named Little Juan kicks us out because we have Beast with us. Little Juan? Where the fuck did that come from? After being forcibly evicted from the premises, we see our old pal Mizuki somewhat creepily standing near the place. All he says is that he's busy, and he won't do anything else. Guess we better wander around town some more then. Well, you can find a couple of Jack Frosts who sell eggs out of someone's basement. Yeah, the monster egg thing's in this game too, just like in Last Bible 2. If you bring an egg with you in a battle and have one of your team members take hits in its place, it starts to grow and eventually hatches into a new demon. Pretty cool mechanic. Aside from that, we can find Mochiwa just hanging around in some random house. She's kinda upset with us. She was so worried while we were gone, she didn't really know what to do. At the end of the day, of course, she's happy, but we do get to hear about how hard it was just sitting around and waiting for news of our safety. She explains that with Alon, they'd gone out searching for the remaining Shadow Walkers on their own, but didn't really have any luck. She's only here in Gotland because of a tip from a bounty hunter suggesting that Gozuki or Mezuki might know something. It seems Mina knows Mezuki and speaks with him quite often. Am I detecting marriage trouble here already? Something's going on because back at the house, Mina's got Mezuki in a corner asking him about the Shadow Walkers. You know, light conversation. At her repeated urging, Mezuki agrees to dig up some info on them, then leaves, appearing to be a bit ashamed that he gave in. Mina then admires that our dad was a Shadow Walker. What are you, obsessed or something? Maybe a spy? Maybe this can help us? I don't know. After all, maybe Mezuki will dig up where old dad's ventured off to. For now, we decide to head out ourselves in pursuit of whatever comes next. Don't worry though, we'll get back to the marriage thing later. To the east is another big city, Thracia Polis. As we enter, Harry possesses another one of those big-ass pink chickens and gives us some updates. Actually, this chicken is this lady's pet, and she's horrified that it suddenly just starts having an in-depth conversation with somebody who just walked into town. So, Alon is here, somewhere, and Mom and Dad are in Megalopolis. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, seems a bit obvious they would just go to the place they were talking about the entire game. Let's see if we can meet up with Alon, then maybe we can work on finding Megalopolis together. Thracia's a bit of a techie city, at least that's a vibe I got. There are elevators and things that just make it feel a bit more advanced than other places. Connecting to the city is an army base at the top. Actually, Ben Showa, the leader of the Polynesian states, is in the next room over. He's right there, you see him? Kinda crazy, he's just visiting right now. But this creates a pretty fucking ridiculous moment of opportunity for our team to strike against him. You'll see, just wait. So, of course, Jonathan ends up being here too. What a surprise. He's here visiting the school principal and randomly brings up Miss Carol as he's talking. Suddenly we realize none of these guys even know what happened with her yet, so again, we have to break the bad news to everyone. It doesn't go over too well with old Johnny Boy, and he doesn't believe the story at all and runs out of the room. As he exits, Alon walks in. After briefly catching up, he sends us over to a beach training school in the city, where Rena, back from our hometown, is waiting to see Rudy. She's been studying fusion and shit with some other kid named Lance, and is angry at Rudy for disappearing. She demands a blue moon flower as an apology, and Rudy, eager to please, promptly runs off to get it. I'm sure he'll be fine. When we go back to see Alon, he decides he wants to directly ask Ben Showa about all the conspiracies we've begun to unravel. And you won't believe what this kid says next. Obviously, he's not going to be able to just waltz right in there past Ben Showa's soldiers and ask some crazy-ass question like that. So his plan is to ambush Ben Showa at the tower and call in a bomb threat. I'm not joking. He is so casual about the idea too, and explains how he made a nifty little device out of some old parts. He's talking about a fucking IED, man. Mochoa realizes you should probably never make a nerd angry, and Alon heads off on his own, since he only bought one ticket to go inside the tower. And minutes later, you hear a loud-ass explosion that shakes the entire town. Is bro dead? From the outside, it looks fine. Soldiers surrounding it say they can't get in without a passcode to unlock the door, so after running back to the army base and grabbing it from the captain's room, we come back, and out comes Ben Showa, seemingly unscathed. He believes this incident is because of the Barbaroi, but, no. It's just some nerd-ass hillbilly kid. Ben Showa says everyone inside is dead, but that's probably not true since he survived, so let's go in and check. Alon must be in here somewhere after he triggered his little bomb. Maybe further up? The place is filled with encounters, I'll tell you that much. You even have to face a boss in here, 2 giant air serpents. Fortunately, since we don't have Rudy, Dew, or Alon, Harry joins in on the fun and helps us out in combat. When we finally discover Alon's whereabouts, it seems he's made some friends. Nobody looks hurt at all, and obviously the Barbaroi had nothing to do with it. Alon confirms that he did in fact blow up some part of this tower with a homemade bomb, and through a flashback shows how Ben Showa denied all of his questions and then ran off when he whipped the thing out. I guess the Barbaroi are a better excuse for the general public than a psycho kid who's up to date on his conspiracy theories. Well, now that we're associated with a domestic terrorist, we'd better leave. Alon decides to separate from the party and go into hiding, since Ben Show has called down the might of the military on this place, and they'll probably murder him on sight. We decide to head back to Gotland and check up on Mizuki's progress. When we get there, Gozuki is there too, and they're in a panic because Mina has gone missing. From what Gozuki says, Bob ran off with her. Gozuki explains that there are these guys, the Wan brothers, who've been hired to ruin Bob and Mina's marriage. So little Wan, that guard who kicked us out, was actually trying to cause trouble himself. Bob, I guess not wanting to be bothered anymore, just upped and kidnapped his wife and disappeared with her. Gozuki then kindly advises us to head up to Mina's house and ask, and I quote, "that fucking bitch," where she ran off to. He seems to be referring to Bob's mother, who tells us that Mina was actually a demon the entire time, a Nekomata to be specific. She offers to let us use their ship if we go and track them down because they're rich as hell, so yeah, we're gonna take them up on that. Before leaving town, talk to this weirdo kid standing in the corner. He asks if you want to hear a song, and then produces an angelic choir from his vocal cords that doesn't sound at all like a human being. It'd be like if I opened my mouth and then the PlayStation startup sound came out. This is Mina's song. I think it'll be useful pretty soon. Mina and Bob are supposed to be at some lake where they had their honeymoon. Need to show up during a full moon to mimic the exact conditions of the night they first met, and then play, or produce, that song we learned. If you get everything right, a house appears out in the middle of the lake, with the two inside. The Wan brothers unfortunately followed us here though. They start beating on Bob, and Mina turns into a completely naked Catwoman to defend him. They decide to take the fight outside after that, and we gotta beat their ass in Bob's yard. The Wan brothers can pack a punch, but as always, it's damn near impossible for them to get you in a bad spot. You kinda outnumber them by default, with Mochua and Harry, so anyone else just makes the fight that much easier. They mostly stuck to physical attacks when I was up against them, so it's just another numbers battle, no special gimmicks to worry about. Now you'd think Bob would be pretty happy, being free to live out his life with an unclothed cat girl, but he's not. In fact, he hates that shit, thinks it's nasty. He tells his wife to get the fuck away, and basically says he can't love something that isn't human, and then runs off. This is probably one of the most pathetic moments I've seen in, well, anything. I mean, you heard what I said, right? He had a cat lady wife. No strings attached, and he turned it down. Bob sucks so hard. Mina's strong though, and says she'll be alright. Who knows, she was friends with Mizuki, who's a demon. Maybe they can work out something. After everything's taken care of, we receive the documents to our new boat from the Bob family, and Gozuki tells us that one Shadow Walker still lives. His mother, a woman named Lynn. Pretty sure we saw her in one of those intro flashbacks. Well, it's something to go on, so thanks. Before leaving this village, we go and pick up Rudy, who has apparently been scammed out of all of his money by those egg-hatching Jack Frosts. The demons said they'd find a blue moon flower for him, and then, well, didn't. Rena says that it's okay Rudy couldn't get a flower after all, and then walks up to the Jack Frosts and fuses them together. I'm not sure if they deserve that. Well, now that we got a boat, we can go find Megalopolis. Head back to Thracia, visit the docks, show the dude your papers, and we're on our way. If you thought the sea would be a safe place to roam around, well, you're wrong. The encounters here are pretty much just as steep as anywhere else, but some weird stuff can hop up on your boat, like red hippos and hydras. Megalopolis is supposed to be southeast from Thracia, but I did come across a weird island before getting there. It's this weird settlement populated by what look like cavemen or monkey people. They end up stealing Joe from us because of some local belief that you can gain a dragon's powers by eating it. It's honestly hilarious because in their eyes, I'm sure stealing him was entirely justified. Why else would someone just sail up to their island and drop off a dragon there? You can find Joe in some cave guy's house. Most of them are actually friendly, and you can even buy things from them. But this one fights you because he wants to get dragon powers. Look, it's a single monkey man. What do you want me to say? Just smack him around a bit, you know? When he goes down, for some reason, he joins the team. Then, outside, everyone starts dancing around, and it's a happy little day. What a weird-ass side quest. We came here and had our friend stolen from us, and ended up leaving the island with one of their people. The high seas discoveries don't stop there either. I found an island with a Nekomata village after that. You can trade for items here with magnetite if you got some, and Mezuki and Mina can be found here too, living what looks like a much better life than whatever was going on back at that other place. You know, like 5 minutes ago. Overall, it's just a nice village. There's no off-the-wall problem that needs to be solved or anything like that. It's just a cool place to restock and read some dialogue. Anyway, back to the main objective. You'll find this place called Nordia, where Captain Shark has a little place to himself. Shark seems to be wanting to build an ark capable of flying to the moon. Philip and Lily are here too, and thank us again for all the help we've been. It seems they're involved in the space travel thing, and even want to get into planetary development. Doesn't that sound like a lot? I mean, you don't even have the ship yet. Nothing wrong with dreaming big, I guess. Philip mentions that they plan on actually buying an ark from the Magoku Kingdom. What? Magoku still exists? I assume you all remember that, but it was a pretty important place in Last Bible too, home to the game's villains, as well as the mythical hero Grias, King of Beasts. Sounds like we'll be over there before too long. If you want to talk to Shark himself about all this space travel stuff, he's down by the docks. He'll tell you about his time in the Air Force too. Something about CL just seems to trigger war flashbacks in whoever he talks to. We'd better keep going to Megalopolis. By the time we get there, Mom and Dad will probably written us off as being dead. The way forward is northeast, where we'll have to pass through more mountains. There's this place we come across called Tavas Village, where a group of people are being run out of town for scaring everyone. Somehow, they know the names and personal details of everyone who lives there, but nobody in the village recognizes them. There's some old lady who has a photographic memory who swears she's never seen these guys before in her life, and everyone just gets really confused. Continue through the village on a Megalo road, and you'll run up on those guys, where they assume we're here to burn them at the stake or some shit like that, and decide to fight us. Look at these smug motherfucks. Really, look at these sprites. These are some badass individuals. They put up a decent fight, and can even heal each other and paralyze your team. As long as you aren't too unlucky with getting hit by the status effects, the battle is perfectly manageable with a small party. I went up against them with Rudy, Dew, and the caveman guy, and only Rudy went down near the end. After we beat them, they explained that they really did live in the village 15 years ago, but one day, they were ambushed by some bandits and then woke up later with no memory of what happened. The Pelesian War was still going when they were knocked out, but when they woke up, it was over, and they had the feeling they had been used as soldiers somehow. We decided to bring them back to town to try and mediate some sort of understanding, but it doesn't work out, and they finally give up and leave. At least we gave it a shot. Finishing up with Megalo Road, you'll find yourself in a new area near one of those towers like the one in Thracia. It's Megalo Tower. We've finally made it to the big city. Predictably, it's a big, multi-level sprawl of a place, with plenty of people to talk to and shops to visit. You might think it'll be a pain in the ass to track down our parents, but our mom is actually wandering around right near the entrance. We have a sweet little reunion, she questions why we left the ship even though it was Jonathan's fault, and we give her the rundown of everything that's happened since. Then, our dad walks in, and the group spends the whole night talking and catching up. The next morning, Dad is already out on the town, still looking for Alex's house, and we're free to go take a look ourselves. Well, let's see if we can find anything good. For one thing, we learned that Megalopolis people are afraid of Magoku because they have such a tight relationship with Beasts and Gaia. We also learned that there's going to be some kind of Colosseum fights going on soon. Rumor has it the winner gets one wish granted from Ben Showa himself. Man, Megami Tensei games sure love their arena battles. In a large central building, you can find a prison where the principal has gotten himself arrested for speaking out against the Gaia prohibition laws. A guard stands there yelling at him for trying to craft a key to unlock his cell, and as he's doing this, the principal rants about how none of the Pelesians are allowed to use Gaia because it makes them easier to control. The guard quiets him down, and we've got no choice but to move along. There's a big building called Joffy's Services that has its own unique music that plays inside. The place is completely empty right now, except for a couple of beast cards sitting on some bookshelves. You can actually even find Alex's house, though Dad has beat us to it. It's one of the highest buildings in the city. You have to go up a couple flights of stairs to reach it. The place is torn apart, and we officially have to face the reality that Yeah, he's dead. As we're talking, suddenly, Jaffe, presumably the owner of Jaffe Services, steps out from behind a bookshelf. How long have you been there? Why are you back there? Jaffe starts going on about how the destruction of Alec's house was a bit excessive for the Polynesian states, and imagines that they were trying to prove a point about how dangerous he was. Then he addresses our dad by his full name, Glenn Larsford, aka the Lightning Shadow. So it turns out, Jaffe is like a private detective or some shit. He was hired by Alec to investigate the Felstow Eternal Engine, and then Alec went missing, along with his family. He takes us back to his office and spends a while telling us more about Alec. Back in the day, the two worked together to free slaves when the practice was still legal in the city. Jaffe also claims to know other Shadow Walkers we've heard about, like Lynn and Randy. Our dad suddenly remembers who this guy is. Way back when the Shadow Walkers were still together, Jaffe was just a kid who went by the nickname Filthy Rich. I guess he was a familiar face to the whole gang, not just Alec. After they reminisce a bit more, Jaffe says his latest lead on the whole Felstow conspiracy is a town called Susa, located in the desert. He tells us that in this town, 15 years ago, the entire population was replaced. Like, they took out the old people and brought new ones in. As we're talking, Mochua and our mom walk in, shouting about how Alon got himself into some kind of trouble. That boy got his ass thrown in jail for going in front of a huge crowd and telling them about the Shadow Walkers, as well as his discovery that the Felstow engine radiates Gaia. Gaia can only be used by living things, like us. According to Alon, the machine itself must be a living being, or at least powered by people somehow. I think we're getting closer to my original theory. It totally eats people. Anyway, Alon is a wanted criminal already. This was a terrible idea. I can't believe he's even still alive. Unlike the other backwater shitholes that we've broken people out of prison in, this is like the world's most advanced city, so we can't just start trouble and expect to survive. There's only one way we're gonna get Alon out of jail. Win the arena battles, get that wish from Ben Shoa, and ask to have him pardoned. Here we go. So the rules of the arena are that the battles are 3-on-3. When we get there, we have to come up with a team name. Dad suggests cool shit like Killer Hurricane or Raga Team, but while he's distracted, Rudy walks in and registers the name for us, thinking he's doing us a favor. The name he chooses, and I shit you not, is the Beat Bop Trio, and it's too late to change it. So that was my team. 2 parents and their child, probably the absolute strangest thing you'd ever expect to see in a brutal combat competition like this. Imagine going in front of like the entire country with your parents, and that's your team name. I'm surprised there isn't like an embarrassment status effect or something that makes CL unable to move. Well, we're gonna have to live with it. It's our time to shine. The stage is ours. The first team we're up against are called the Night Demons. The main guy doesn't even have a head, and his 2 fairy partners can put you to sleep and afflict you with a panic status effect. Somehow, our mom is really powerful. She has a range of great healing abilities and a decent boomerang attack that hits the entire enemy team. Dad is powerful, like you'd expect, but really, the fact that Mom is comparable to him at all makes me wonder if that Glorka dude from way back at the start was right about him becoming rusty. Jokes aside, it's actually a pretty fun party setup to work with. My protagonist had a pretty balanced build, so together with a strong attacker and healer, fights were quite fair and enjoyable. The next fight is against the Dark Assassins, led by some guy who claims to have fought against Dad in the war. He looks like a normal guy during the dialogue, but then the fight starts, and he's this blue troll thing. The 2 Red Knights flanking him can heal, so you want to bring them down as soon as possible. You'll have to look out for some group targeting lightning spells too, but it's easily tankable with the healing we're working with. Once they're down, the blue dude is a total joke. The fight after this significantly raises the stakes. It's against the undefeated champions, the team of Thor the Great. They are in fact pretty tough. The 2 healers flanking Thor have an upgraded spell that restores a lot. They can apply attack buffs to each other, and Thor has a lot of HP to burn through. The strategy is basically the same as the previous battle. You'll just have to try a bit harder to maximize your damage and keep your numbers up. When you emerge victorious, there's more. beating the champions wasn't enough. The final battle is the most challenging of them all, and Ben Showa even takes his special seat right next to the combat for it. So who's the biggest, baddest piece of shit in the entire arena? The group who's apparently even stronger than Thor? 3 white women. Well, it's actually 2 fairies led by the mythical hero Morgan, but their sprites on the map are 3 white housewives wearing aprons. The fight definitely takes longer than Thor, but they aren't actually that much stronger. And with that, we're the baddest sons of bitches in all the land. Ben Showa is really surprised to see our dad in front of him, and the two engage in some passive-aggressive joking about the fact that they want to kill each other. Dad formally requests that Alon and the principal are released from prison, and Ben Showa has it done immediately. Our dad promises his vengeance, and then we head back to the city. I'd say around here, we're closing in on the end of the game. We've still got a bit of stuff left to do, but it's clear things are coming to a boiling point, and from this point onwards, some pretty crazy shit starts to go down. When we get to Joffy's place, the principal is already there, and he's fascinated by Dew. Alon is also safe, and has surprisingly little to say about his time as a convict. Joffy compliments us on our arena fighting skills, and now plans to head off to Souza, hoping to run across those 3 dudes from Tapas Village on the way. Finally, Alon starts speaking up, and claims he has a device ready that can bring back our dad's memories. We didn't exactly know he had lost any memories, though I guess all that stuff about mind locks that Harry had listened to may have been a good hint. The device is this goofy-ass helmet, but what do you know, it actually works. Dad suddenly recalls something about the painting behind him. It's of an event known as the Bow Meteor Shower, which occurs every 15 years. There's that number 15 again. Dad has a very vivid flashback, so detailed it even has color this time. In it, Alec details a stealth mission to eradicate an entire battalion, including a specialized demon unit. As he's going over this plan, sure enough, the meteor shower starts. Then a massive vehicle called a sand roamer arrives beneath the cliff they're all standing on. These vehicles were once used to travel beneath the ground and connected the Pelesian states, but they were decommissioned once the war started, making this an extremely strange thing to spot. The group boards the ship and finds hordes of random people, all unresponsive, like they're in some kind of vegetative state. Then a handful of Pelesian councilmen enter, including, of course, Ben Showa. Good old Ben explains that unbeknownst to the public, a method of absorbing Gaia, the essence of life, has been discovered, and we've accidentally stumbled across it. Using a material called lapis, which is in the other Last Bio games, Gaia can be freely extracted from living beings and used to power, well, whatever. So I was kinda right. It's not quite eating people, but the human batteries, we can call them, are all but dead, so close enough. Ben Showa then seems to reveal that he's a being from an entirely different time period, Blantica, 20,000 years ago. Apparently, the Blanticans had mastered a technique of sealing people's memories away, and naturally, they use it on our Shadow Walkers here to ensure that this big secret never gets out. This seems to annoy the other councilmen, who would much rather send the group to a place called Gamora. Alon, satisfied with all this new information, realizes Fellisto itself isn't alive, it's just a device that sucks out people's delicious life energy. Yeah, kinda gathered that. Joffy doubles down on his mission to investigate Sousa, and our dad decides that he needs to hone his skills if he wants to survive a direct fight with Ben Showa. So he and Mom head off to a cursed training ground called Death Valley. Sounds exciting. Mochua and Alon stay in the city to read books and build homemade explosives, and we have to go look for Jonathan, who hasn't been seen in a while. I would rather have done any of those other things than this. I could not give less of a shit about what Jonathan's doing. But we got no choice, so let's do it. The first thing I found was actually a totally empty island near the city with a hidden boss encounter on it. There are quite a lot of these throughout the game. Specific spots all across the world will have beefy enemies you can fight, and they give out a lot of experience points. Some of these you really gotta put in work to find. After this little self-imposed side mission, I somehow ended up back at the Nekomata village, and then I found myself in a weird place called the Gulf Island. This is a dungeon mostly submerged under the water, and to navigate it, you actually have to walk around underwater, where you'll drown in just a few seconds. You're basically making a mad dash between spots where you can breathe, and if you fuck up and drown, that's game over, and you have to reload a save. Rudy hints at using some kind of Gaia breathing apparatus, but I didn't have that shit yet, so I just decided to make my way through without it. You can find some good treasure here, like beast bones that can be used to fuse special demons, but the main attraction is this underwater ziggurat that you can see once you're at the end of this place. It's out of reach for now, but we're gonna have to go there eventually. We also get a hint on where Jonathan might be. One of his slime demons shows up and says that he went off with Harry to kill Banipal on his own, probably to avenge Miss Carol. Went off where exactly? Well, it sounds like down there. Don't ask me how. We're definitely gonna have to have a breathing device for that one, so we gotta backtrack to Alon and ask him for some help. He whips the device up for us, no problem. Then we gotta backtrack all the way back to the stupid ass cave and do it all over again.